Hello, and welcome back to Open Studio. Today I'm not sitting at my sewing machine because I was able to finish isolated over the course of the weekend. So I'm sitting in just a corner of my studio on a stool so that I can show you the finished piece. And then we'll just sort of sit here and chat while you guys look at that. But anyway, I think I've said before, I create feelings out of fiber in the form of textured fiber paintings, which are abstractly shaped art quilts ultimately. And typically my designs in my feeling series are a bunch of abstract shapes that have a lot of flow. There's a lot of connection between the shapes, and they just sort of build upon each other. And ultimately what they represent is what I imagine a feeling would look like if we could see it, if it was tangible. But I made Feeling Isolated, and I'll show you after I kind of tell you this part of it. I chose Isolated as my latest feeling to create shortly after relocating from the Chicago area down into the West Palm Beach, Florida area. And I did it for two reasons. I mean, the first reason that I decided that I chose Isolated as the feeling was because of the whole coronavirus thing and the shelter in place thing and the quarantining and lockdown and whatever word you want to call it for sitting in your house. And because that itself was feeling very isolated. When I left Chicago, it was about a week after Chicago area went into shutdown. And so I didn't experience a heck of a lot of it because I was so busy getting a house packed up and dealing with movers. I did have people in my house because of that, because we were being moved by my partner's company. But it was still kind of an isolating experience. And so then we drove across country in my own car. My youngest stepson came with to carry some stuff the movers couldn't take as well. So we had two vehicles, and he was in his own car. So even the drive was rather isolating because there really wasn't anybody to talk to in the car because it's just me. So I can talk to myself for hours. That 18-hour drive is a long time to talk to yourself. So it was pretty quiet. So the shutdown happened shortly before moving down here. I then picked up and moved in the middle of the shelter in place. And then, of course, we're still barely coming out of that now because today's June 1st. So when I got down here to the West Palm Beach area, and the first week or so again was really kind of distracting, and I didn't really notice the shelter in place because I'm waiting on a mover to show up, and then they came, and then we're unboxing boxes, and we're putting things away, and we're getting settled in the new home. And so I didn't have time to make any art. All of that was on hold while I was in the midst of this moving process. And when we finally got everything kind of put away, and I had my studio put together in such a way that I could start creating something, there wasn't even a lot of thought behind it. It was just, let's make Isolated. Because I was feeling because I felt that the whole world was feeling isolated because of the whole shelter in place thing. So the driving force behind creating this piece was initially the coronavirus and the whole shelter in place quarantine lockdown thing and this sort of global isolation that we were all experiencing and in many cases are still experiencing all around the world. I thought about it in terms of children being pulled out of school and suddenly homeschooling and missing their young little friends because that has an impact on their young psyches, just as it has an impact on our adult psyches to be sheltered in place. Now, if you're an introvert like me, I do love people. I like groups of them in small bursts, and then I need to go home and I need a lot of quiet time and downtime to recharge. If you're an extrovert, I don't know how you've handled this. Because even as an introvert, it has felt very, very isolating to be sheltered in place during all of this, especially moving into a brand new city in a brand new state where we don't even have friends locally. So while we couldn't necessarily go visit our friends, we couldn't have dinner with our friends, even if we were back still in Chicago, it felt even more isolating to be in a brand new place, sheltered in place in the home, and knowing you really can't go anywhere, can't do anything, can't even really explore the new community. So it was this combination factor for creating Isolated. It was this, again, the global isolation and then the individual isolation of moving to a new place in the midst of a globally isolating event. So that was the initial reason for creating, or that was all of the underlying reasons for creating Isolated. I started this piece at in middle of April, so they take me about 6 weeks to do because I don't get to spend 8 hours a day working on them. And so 6 weeks is about average for me. But as we've progressed through, and as I was completing it this weekend, I finished all the stitching on Friday and put the backing on I finished the rest of it on Sunday. We ran a bunch of errands on Saturday. We actually got out of the house. We were weird. It was weird to be out with a bunch of people. It was sort of strange. I'm out of practice. But Saturday I finished up. I put the backing on. I got the poetry label put on the back. I put the hangers on the piece. I took the photos. I wrote the blog post. I did a variety of other things for it on Sunday. And as I was doing that, as I was finishing up those other bits and pieces to get this thing complete, and I will turn this here in just a minute so you can see it in its full glory, the riots and the looting were breaking out in sort of in the tail ends of peaceful protests for the murder of George Floyd. And I don't know that I have anything particularly to say about this. I don't know that I'm the person to say this. I'm a white woman. I have privilege, obviously, look at my pale face. I have privilege that I didn't know I had, but apparently I do have, because I don't have to worry about being judged for the color of my skin. And to have one more life lost because of the color of his particular skin is just too much. And so the rage and the grief that is flowing through this country and is flowing through me is too much. And it too is isolating. And it too is part of this piece now. It's time that we stop this. It's time that we come together. It is time that we remember that we are all human. That we all have flesh, we all have blood and skin and bone. It's time we remember what all of the world religions teach, what all of the various arms of spirituality teach, what agnostics believe, what atheists believe, and that is to harm none. And yet we keep harming each other. And we're harming people disproportionately because of the color of their skin. And it's just wrong. And it continues to isolate us when we are a human collective. We are connected by magic and spirit and light and love and heart. And yet we continue to try to sever these connections based on color. I love color. All color. It's why I work with color. And so I see color. I used to think it was right to say that I don't see color, but I've learned that that is not right. I've learned it is important to see it, to acknowledge it, to recognize it, and to love it no matter what color. And so, feeling isolated, this is the piece, I'll back up a little more. Feeling isolated was made not just for coronavirus, not just for me moving across country in the middle of a pandemic, but also for the isolation that we continue to perpetuate on segments of society by treating them differently because of the color of their skin. And it's time for that to stop. The only experience I have to speak from is my own. And so it is not the experience of anyone who is oppressed or harassed or killed for the color of their skin. But I know what it is to be made to feel less than. I've had experiences like that. I know they're not the same, but I know how it can feel to be made to feel less than. And it's not a good feeling. It's a horribly isolating feeling. And here we've done it to entire colors of people. It's bullshit. In the town I grew up in, we didn't have many black people. We had a lot of brown, and we had Hispanic, and we had a lot of Asian people. And And I grew up with them. My closest friends when I was young were Hispanic. My closest friends in high school were Hispanic and Asian. And we had one black boy in my class, and his sister was a couple of years behind me in school. I think she was in my brother's class. And I don't remember thinking of them as really any different, other than he was darker than I was, and she was darker than I was. Because we all still kind of played together. We all still ran around the playground together. And so we didn't notice the difference because we were children. And as adults, for some reason, we notice these differences and we make something out of it. We make it a big deal. And it clearly is a big deal because we're killing people for it. And so, feeling isolated, which represents the separateness that occurs both in society as a result of sheltering in place for this virus, as part of my move to a brand new city in the middle of a pandemic. This isolation needs to end. We need to find a way to create the connection that already exists among us. We need to find a way to make equality the norm. And I don't know how we do that. Again, I'm a white woman with privilege I didn't know I had. I didn't understand it. So I don't know what I can do to help resolve this situation. So what I will do is I will keep making art. I will keep seeing color. And I will keep loving color, no matter the shade. So, like I said, this is Feeling Isolated, my latest textured fiber painting. The next one I'm going to make, and I'm getting started on that today, is Feeling Connected, because I feel like that's the next step. And I'm going to do something a little different with that one in the sense that I'm actually going to use the same outline I used for Feeling Isolated. I'm going to basically mirror the shape, but I am going to use the same outline shape. And I'm not sure where what other similarities there may be, but the next piece will be Feeling Connected. So the pieces will tie together a bit more as opposed to having these sort of little islands. These to me represent sort of the desert island of being sheltered in place, the desert island of moving to a brand new state in the midst of a pandemic, the desert island that it means to be black or brown or person of color in this country. And Feeling Connected won't have deserts. It won't have islands. It will tie pieces together and build bridges and bring unity. So today's Hope in Studio is a little shorter than usual, I think. We'll stop here at 15 minutes. Because I don't know how much more, I don't know that I have more to say. I wasn't sure I had anything to say about our current situation, but I guess I did. So for people of color, I see you. I feel for you. I sympathize. I'm an empath and I can feel your pain. I can't experience it, but I can feel it. And I am sorry for it. And I will do what I can to help make it stop. I love you and I see you.